Welcome to Sex with Rebecca, a show geared towards relationships and sexuality that'll help you enjoy your relationships more than you ever thought possible. So send us your difficult questions and we'll bring you expert answers unlike anywhere else. On tonight's show, we'll be discussing marriage makeovers, answering an email on size matters, and giving you some hot bedroom tips for stoking each other the right way to stoke the fires in your bedroom. Let's begin with a discussion on marriage makeovers with a very special guest, Dr. Doug Weiss, a world-renowned media personality and author of numerous books, including 30-Day Marriage Makeover. Welcome, Dr. Weiss. Always an honor and a pleasure. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Well, it's good to see you again, Rebecca.
When we talk about makeovers, there's this assumption that something's gone wrong. People falling out of love, for instance. Why does that happen, Dr. Weiss?
Well, sometimes we're making over from like a disaster. Sometimes we're making over from just kind of average or okay, and taking it to another level. But what happens is, your question's great because people falling out of love, it doesn't happen. What they do is they fall out of the disciplines that caused love. And when you fall out of the disciplines, you fall out of love. Okay, because when you're dating, you spend quality time. When you're dating, you share your heart. You spiritually connect. You give each other physical affection. You listen to each other. You praise each other. Those are all disciplines you don't know that you're actually doing, but those disciplines led to the feeling of I can't do without you. And and then what happens is you get married and you start managing things and getting more committed to work, and the disciplines that got you there disappear. It's kind of like the person who actually went on diet, got in shape, got ready for whatever event they were doing. And then afterwards, they went back to donuts and ice cream and sodas and not taking care of themselves. And they wonder, how did I gain that weight back? You create different disciplines.
It's so well put because I always say to people, like, do the math. Are you doing the stuff that you did initially when you're falling in love? And invariably, they're not. So, how does one recapture that loving feeling? Obviously, said to keep up with the disciplines, dating each other, for instance. But there seems to be a lot of confusion around what that looks like when you're married. So maybe you can talk about that next, as in how
Well, I
often.
think hot dating, like you get married to keep your date. Like that's the way I did. I wanted to date Lisa for the rest of my life. So I wanted a hot date. So I married her. I didn't want anyone else having her, right? So what you want to do is have dating in your marriage. Okay, so let me give you some guidelines. Dating is not running errands. Home Depot, Tim Hortons, and is not a date. That's running errands.
Uh-huh.
Okay, it is not talking about problems.
Mhm.
Okay, so you don't want to make your date a disaster. And it's also not shopping unless both people agree. She can't run him to the mall for a date. He can't run her to a boat show for a date unless they both agree. Hey, let's go antiquing. That sounds like fun. Let's go. Okay, now it's 3 or 4 hours of fun. And one of the best things, Rebecca, is to rotate responsibility. So one
Mhm.
week it'd be your date. You decide where you want to go. You're not trying to make your husband happy. You're trying to make Rebecca happy. Okay, and the next date, it's his date. He decides where he wants to go, how he wants to have fun. And you just rotate this back and forth every week or every other week, no less than that. And if you fall out of dating, then set a consequence. Okay, if we don't date, we'll give $100 to somebody we really don't like.
I really like that because that's going to make you stick to the plan. And you're right, it has to be something fun. I always tell my clients at least 2 or 3 hours. You can't talk about chores or finances or kids. It should be something that you're both enjoying. But I really like that. You have to give $100 to somebody you don't like because that way you're going to stick to it. Now, another
Well, see,
thing,
that's the discipline. That's the discipline of
that's, the-
dating.
that's right. So
When you have
this,
the discipline of dating, you have the feelings of liking each other.
right, right. And there's consequences if you don't put an effort. Now, another thing you talk about in your books is sharing feelings.
Mhm.
And you actually have couples do a feeling exercise. What exactly is that? And how often should a couple do this?
Well, you should share your feelings every day. Okay, and so there's an exercise, and what you do is to start with for the first 90 days, get the skill. I feel blank when, like, I feel calm when I'm hanging out on my hammock here in Colorado. I first remember feeling calm when, I was looking at clouds when I was with my sister and we were making shapes out of them. I was 9 years old. And that gives you kind of the emotional vocabulary for 90 days. And then after that, just two feelings from your day. But you should be sharing feelings with your spouse every day. Otherwise, you'll get emotionally constipated and you'll get all clogged up and you'll act funny and weird. And so it's just not really pretty.
And it's not very comfortable either, the way you described it. But you're right, we have to do that. I also encourage my couples to do emotional check-ins, which is essentially the same thing, and you're kind of keeping in
Mhm,
touch with each other's dreams, feelings, and
mhm,
that's sort of the stuff that builds a lot of different types of connections, including a spiritual connection.
mhm,
Now you talk about, bringing the mind, body, and soul together through the spiritual
mhm.
connection. How can couples do that?
Well, everyone has their own background as far as spirituality, okay? So that's not the point. You can pray together regardless of your faith or even lack of faith. I've had atheists say, okay, God, I'm not sure, but let's do this, okay? And so, or they can meditate or whatever is spiritual for them, they can do together. But again, every day. What's important is intimacy is a result of a known set of disciplines.
I
When you
really
have
like that.
those known disciplines, you have the results no matter who you are, no matter what your faith, no matter what your lack of faith, no matter what color, no matter what size, no matter if you come from two different cultures.
And you can have that. Thank you so much. I mean, you put it so simply and elegantly that anybody can follow that. Still ahead, more suggestions for building positivity and sexual agreements. So stay tuned. Welcome back to Sex with Rebecca, a show where we bring you expert advice on important matters to help your relationships be more intimate, exciting, and emotionally fulfilling. We've been discussing marriage makeovers to recapture that mind, body, and soul connection with a very special world-class expert, Dr. Doug Weiss. Dr. Weiss, since we're talking about getting that positive feeling back, can you comment on how couples can accomplish that?
Well, a positive feeling is a result. Like this morning, I swam for a good 30, 45 minutes. I worked out and I stretched. Do you think I feel good? I feel awesome. Why do I feel awesome? I swam, I worked out, and I stretched. Okay. Do you see what I'm saying?
So
So
you
when you put the
invested in it,
discipline,
you're putting the work into it.
right. So when you have the disciplines of dating, sharing your feelings, spiritually connecting, nurturing each other, those disciplines bring feelings. Okay, and this is what I mean. Western culture resists that. They want the results without the work. They want a six pack by taking a pill instead of changing their diet and actually getting it done. Do
And
you see what I'm
changing their
saying?
lifestyle, yeah, and putting some work
Right.
into it. And that's just it, enjoying the work, the journey itself. There are many times, I know you get up really early, but there are many people who say, when I first get up in the morning, I don't feel like working out, but once they get going, it feels great. So again, I think sometimes we can feel lazy in our relationships, but once we do that investment, we're going to feel good, just like you described. Now, another
Well,
area,
Rebecca, I've had couples who were so disconnected they didn't have sex in 10 or 20 years. Now, I don't
wow.
know if you can imagine sleeping next to someone and not having sex for over a decade or two. And within days or a few weeks of doing what I asked them to do, they were not only having sex, they liked each other again because they put the disciplines back in their relationship that caused those feelings.
And that's just it. They like each other. I mean, we were talking about sex addiction before. The things that couples do sometimes, they drift so far apart, and couples will say, we just want to get to like each other again. And that's exactly, you just nailed it, learning to like each other again. Now, another area that can impact couples is disagreements around sex. Whether
Absolutely.
it's quantitative, qualitative, what they want to do, when they want to do, how often they want to do it. So, can you briefly discuss how people can navigate through those differences next?
Yes, we solve those problems in the book, The Five Sex Languages, and a couple other books I've written. What you do is you can create your garden, what's in your garden, what's not in your garden, agree with what's acceptable and not acceptable, and what you're willing to experiment with and what you're not. Get an agreement. Okay. That's that side. The other side is a sexual agreement. How often does each person want to have sex? Negotiate that down so it's agreeable, and then stay in that lane, and then rotate it back and forth, and set up consequences. If someone doesn't play by the rules, then they set a consequence. If I'm not asking you, if I'm saying no to you, then I have a consequence. Well, that keeps the whole thing staying moving.
And it,
Otherwise, it's like, well, no, I want to punish you, so we're not having sex. Okay, that's fine, but you need to go clean the garage because that's your consequence. Well, no, I'd rather have sex with you than clean the garage. Okay.
So you're really making it clear there, okay, which one is it going to be? What are you going to pick? But you're right. We have to have ways where we keep going and also be in tune with what does sex mean to the other person. A lot of times women will think that he just wants to get off, and the guy, that's the only way where he's connecting. Now, you mentioned sex languages, and you've kind of, you've developed these 5 sex languages, and you talk about rekindling a marriage, and part of that being actually knowing what your partner's sex language is. So can you
And
talk about that
speaking
next,
it,
please? And
and
speaking it
speaking
and
it.
practicing it. So can you tell us what those sex languages are next?
Now I can do that. Well, they're fun, desire, where you want to be wanted. There's pleasure. There is celebration, and there's patience. And so once you learn how your spouse is designed, you can speak in their language all the way from invitation to foreplay, during, and even after sex. You can speak their code, which maximizes pleasure for them. So like if you were pleasure, Rebecca, and if I had the pleasure of being your husband, I would say, Rebecca, I want to spend time with you. And you'd be like, oh, yay. But now if you were pleasure, I would say, Rebecca, I want to have fun with you. And
And
you'd be like, oh, okay. And so it would differently to you depending on who you were.
who
Does
can
that make
turn that
sense?
down? Yeah, absolutely. And lots of times, people don't understand, just much like love languages, I guess, they don't understand their partner is trying so hard, and maybe they're speaking in their own love language, but
Always
it's
that way.
about, yeah,
It's always that way.
it's
If I
about
if
finding.
I'm if I'm a fun sex language, I'm trying to talk the patient spouse into fun, and they're not interested. Okay, they're interested in patience. Okay,
Absolutely. And
so you got to have that conversation, and the 5 sex languages really helps that because then you can just objectively have the conversation that we are different and to be able to validate that and capitalize on it instead of trying to conform the other person to be like you.
because it never works. And I've had couples where one party says that my partner is like, let's go, we have some time, let's go. And I'm like, no, I'm not interested. You're not going to rush me, you're not going to squeeze me in between things. And what they're looking for is the patience. Time flies when we're chatting, but good thing that you have a book on the subject matter for our viewers to revolutionize their relationships. So buy a copy, peeps, highly recommended. When we return, we'll be talking about how to revitalize your marriage and lots more, so don't go anywhere. Welcome back to Sex with Rebecca, a show geared towards making your relationships the best they can be, both in and out of the bedroom. We've been discussing all sorts of stuff about getting closer together. So Dr. Weiss, author of 30-Day Marriage Makeover, will you tell us how to revitalize our marriage? You've got a formula for that 30-day marriage makeover. Can you tell us what that looks like?
Well, what it looks like is, some couples, like, you're a counselor and people come to see you for counseling, and oftentimes they want to solve this problem or that problem or that problem.
Mhm.
Well, I say, let me ask you about your structures, dating, social, spiritual, sexual, emotions, money. I go through the structures. And then I say, we're going to work on the structures first because you're out of whack. And then we'll solve problems because you're not a team yet. So you're trying to do something you're not capable of doing because you're not a team. So we work on dating, get that going. We work on, usually social takes care of itself. We work on emotional and praising each other because a lot of couples don't praise each other. We work on the sexual agreement we just talked about and moving them forward on that. And if we get to money, we get to money. And so what happens is they start having structural progress. They start feeling better and liking each other. So a lot of the problems they came to disappear. And then we can actually work with the problems that are left, okay, because their marriage is actually, they're feeling better.
They already feel, and it sounds like I like the word you use, structures, because it sounds like they're the pillars that hold everything together. So
It
you've got
is.
your foundation, you've got the pillars, so naturally things are going to move in the right direction. And a lot of times these problems are because maybe they haven't even talked about those pillars, they're not in sync. And it's so sad when people don't talk about those important things. Why do you think that is, and how would you encourage them to open up on that stuff? Because it's all really important, it's what holds a marriage
Well, can
together.
you, can you remember the class you took in high school on marriage?
Not
Can you
really.
remember the class you took in college on marriage?
Not really.
Not really. So we have all these uneducated people doing something they're not trained to do. So
Uh-huh.
you wonder why they're not doing it exactly well.
And the
So so this
understanding
is a lack
is,
of information. It's not a
uh-huh.
lack of, these people love each other, they try, and so when they get the right tools, they do really, really well. And so a lot of what you do is educate people, and what I do is educate people. And once they get those pieces of information, like the 30-day makeover, they can actually build it themselves once you give them kind of directions. If I get a box and there's a whole bunch of parts and there's no directions, I don't know what to do, so I try my best. And they try their
Absolutely.
best. What you do oftentimes is provide information and some directions, and they go, oh, I can put one and one together and get two. I can do this. And that's what we do. We give them the structure, and they can put that structure together on their own, and they can actually start maximizing their marriage because it functions based on a structure.
Because at the end of the day, nobody has taught them, so they don't have an understanding. And they've usually tried to learn from role models, their parents who also didn't have any understanding. Nobody taught them what to do, particularly because back in the day, gender roles and whatnot, and the family structure looks so different nowadays. So there's nobody who's actually taught them. Can you tell us real quick what people will find in the 30-day marriage makeover? Can you hit the key points that our viewers will
Sure.
find if they grab a copy of the book?
They're going to find a plan on how to make dating successful for the rest of their lives. They're going to find a way to share their feelings intelligently and for the rest of their lives. They're going to be able to connect spiritually. They're going to be able to really learn how to praise each other, to really get good at that. Not only learning how to give praise, Rebecca, but to receive praise. So many people don't even say thank you when you say, you're beautiful, you're kind, you're amazing. And they got to learn how to let that in. They're going to learn how to have great sex. They're going to learn how to maintain sexual peace in their relationship, and also they're going to look at their money issues. They're going to look at how to intentionally have friends in their life so that they are maturing individually and as a couple.
Very much like a one-stop shop where they learn all of that. I want to go back to what you just said about receiving the positive compliments. I mean, you've been talking about throughout this episode about creating the positivity. I do this
Sure.
little exercise where I get each party to compliment the other, and they take
Mm-hmm.
turns. When they're complimenting the other, they're okay. They're comfortable with it. They may not do it that often, but they're comfortable when you encourage them. But when it comes to receiving, it is so
Mm-hmm.
hard for people. It's nearly impossible to just receive them and say thank you. And it's similar with repair attempts as well. A person may sort of reach out when those rifts happen. And again, receiving that attempt is really hard. So can you leave us with a few key messages on how to receive anything from a compliment to someone's effort or repair attempt? Because that's one of the areas where we're not that great.
Right. So let's just practice, Rebecca. You're an amazing, beautiful woman.
See, now I can't receive that. I'm having a hard time. I want to hide. How about I
No,
say
no.
that to you,
So
Dr.
let's
Weiss? You're
practice again.
amazing. You're
I'll do it again.
awesome.
Okay. You're an amazing, beautiful woman.
Now,
Say
I know I
thank you.
should say thank you very
Thank
much.
you. Like say it from here.
I'm
Because it's
saying it
true.
from here, but it was so hard. It's so true. Now I know why my clients struggle because it's just one of those things where and I can see why it's not just better to give than it's to receive. It's also easier. So any other final tips to wrap everything together that we talked about? Because we've got in all kinds of different directions. And of
Sure.
course, they have to buy the book if they want all
Yeah.
this great information. But any final 2 or 3 key points you want to leave our clients with to rekindle that marriage and to look forward to that marriage makeover?
I would say first of all for them to realize that it's not always, they don't have the information, so get informed. Then number two, get to work, do the work, and number three, get support if you need it. That can be a friend, that could be a counselor, that could be a spiritual leader, that could be the neighbor you walk with on, hey, we're doing these things and I want to be accountable to get these things done. And just maintain that. And what happens is all that junk in your marriage can be pushed out. It's just like losing weight or getting in shape. It's amazing how people can transform their marriage if they decide to have the disciplines to move forward with it.
Thank you so much, Dr. Weiss, for all your remarkable insights.
Well, thank you, Rebecca. Good to see you again.
Likewise, we'll have to have you again. Still ahead, an email on size matters and special bedroom tips that'll put the play back in foreplay. In other words, delicious stuff that you'll want to stick around for. Welcome back to Sex with Rebecca, geared towards making your relationships more robust than you ever thought possible. So send us your questions and we'd love to bring you expert advice. Today's question is from Gerald. I thought being well endowed is a good thing, but my girlfriend keeps complaining about how it hurts. Please tell me what we can do to work around our problem, because I really love this girl and don't want this to destroy our sex life. Signed, Gerald. Gerald, I guess too much of a good thing applies here as well, particularly since we're all shaped differently and have different preferences. FYI, guys fixate on size more so than women do. As Whoopi Goldberg put it, most guys are bigger than they fear and smaller than what they say. Now on to your question. First and foremost, you need to rule out any history of abuse or gynecological issues. A woman can literally clam shut if there's any fear involved. Fear of pain, fear of sex, fear of unresolved trauma. But barring that, most women need a lot more foreplay than they get. When you think you pleasured her enough, go down and pleasure her some more, and then some more after that. Not only does that take arousal through the roof, the cervix flips out of the way and the inner 2/3 of the vagina balloons, so it can accommodate any size comfortably. You might also try using some water-based lube as part of foreplay. Slick means smooth. But most important of all, talk to her about what she needs, possibly what she fears, and how you can make her feel safe, desirable, comfortable, and turned on. She's the best person to guide you beyond the generic stuff that I've already shared. And if all else fails, a visit to a gynecologist isn't such a bad idea to ensure that everything's okay. On the flip side, for guys who might be too small, any positions with her legs straight up in the air will narrow out her vaginal canal, making your girth feel huge. Any position where she draws her knees back towards her chest will shorten the vaginal canal, making you feel really long to her. Obviously, these aren't good positions for you, Gerald, because they'll only intensify your issue. To our audience, if you have any questions of your own, do write us. We love your involvement. Speaking of which, if you enjoy the show, we'd really like you to subscribe to our YouTube channel. If we have enough people connecting with us there, we'll be uploading additional stuff that's way too hot to be aired on TV. So do help us make that happen. Still ahead, 60 tips for turning up the heat in your bedroom. Welcome back to Sex with Rebecca. Now, before we close, we have a very special segment for you. 5 tips to turn up the heat in your bedroom. Number 1, stroke the ego before you stroke the libido. As an infidelity expert, I've discovered that more often than not, people cheat when they've stopped feeling special at home and someone else makes them feel uber special. So, do your relationship a solid. Keep that mutual admiration going like when you first started. You know exactly what I'm talking about since you crave it as much as I do. Number 2, don't be in a hurry to ditch the curry in lieu of fast food. Garlic, ginger, onions, cayenne, cumin, and coriander are all proven aphrodisiacs, known for getting the heart pumping and the gonads stirring. But be sure to finish off with some cardamom and chocolates to freshen up your breath, not to mention activate the same part of the brain that'll leave you feeling oh so sexy. Number 3, go hot and cold. Some nerve endings are touch and pressure sensitive, others are temperature sensitive. So if you're giving a BJ, be sure to stimulate both by incorporating ice cubes, Listerine strips, etc., and then blowing warm breath on previously cool areas. When we don't play with temperature changes, only half of our nerve endings do their thing, while the other half stay asleep. 4, play show and tell. Sit naked in front of each other, dim the lights if you're shy, and then take turns touching yourselves from your head to your toes in the way that you'd like to be touched. It's a great way of showing each other what we like without hurting anyone's egos. Remember what I said in the first point? 5, kill the competition. Take an electronic-free hour with each other every single night. Develop a ritual if need be to spend quality time together. And if you plan to fool around, skip the scented candles and kill any music with lyrics, both of which activate the part of the brain that can make it hard to stay hard. So there you have it. Thank you, viewers, for joining us. Be sure to tune in again next week. And don't forget to email us your questions and subscribe to our YouTube channel to catch up on missed episodes, to watch your favorite shows, and to access some pretty hot stuff that can't be aired on TV. I'm Rebecca Rosenblatt, your host, wishing you happy, healthy, and passionate relationships. Until next time.